Welcome to Shabdakarmi by Akshaybhasha. Shabdakarmi means wordsmith. It's a forum created by Akshaybhasha for the immigrant writers. In this very first episode of Shabdakarmi, Bhagyashree Barlinge of Akshaybhasha sits down with Sri Lankan American author and journalist Srianthi Perera to explore A Maiden's Prayer, her very first novel. The very first writer in this series is Srianthi Perera. The title of her first book is A Maiden's Prayer. It is the same title of the piano music piece that was played at the beginning of this program. A Maiden's Prayer, Srianthi's first book, has received considerable recognition from the literary community. This book has been selected as the 2021 Next Generation Indie Book Awards finalist in the Multicultural Fiction category, and as the 2021 South Asia Book Award Highly Commended Book in the Young Adult Literature category. Her book is available on Amazon. It has received 67 wonderful reviews. 80% of them have 5-star rating. Srianthi Perera grew up in Sri Lanka, living next door to a young woman who played A Maiden's Prayer at twilight. After studying English literature, she embarked on a lifelong career in newspaper and magazine journalism that took her to the Sultanate of Oman, Canada, and the United States. Her work has appeared in the Sunday Observer in Sri Lanka, the Times of Oman, What's On in Dubai, the magazine named There in Vancouver, Canada, the Arizona Republic, and more recently in a cluster of community newspapers headed by Times Media Group in Phoenix. As a child, she was not to know that her neighbor's mellifluous piano playing would spark her debut novel. She's awaiting the next hint of memory. Her website is srianthiperera.com and she is available on the social medias like Twitter, Facebook, email, and Instagram. Welcome Srianthi to Shabdakarmi by Akshaybhasha.
Thank you, Bhagyashree, for inviting me to be on your program, Akshaybhasha.
Let me ask you my first question. Why did you select this particular name, A Maiden's Prayer, for your book?
So to answer your question, The Maiden's Prayer is a title of a piano piece.
Mm-hmm.
It was composed by a Polish composer in the mid-1800s in Europe. And the piano piece was not really accepted by people at that time. In fact, people in Europe were sarcastic about it. However, in Sri Lanka, for some reason, it became really popular, and any student of piano music, they would play this piece at one time or the other. So I used the phrase as the title because, as you know, there's a young woman there who plays the piano, and she's praying in song for a partner. So that was one reason why I used the Maiden's Prayer title. And also, I used the music to create the mood of the characters and the environment in various places in the novel. So it becomes like an external marker.
The storyline is very interesting. There is a narrator, a young girl named Tamara De Silva, and she's telling the story of her uncle, Uncle Birdie. But who is the protagonist in this book? Is it Tamara or Uncle Birdie?
So if you look at it simply, Tamara De Silva is the narrator, and she's telling the story of Bertie Uncle. And in that sense, this is Bertie Uncle's story. He's the protagonist.
Right.
But if you go deeper, if you think of the story a little bit more, you will see that Bertie Uncle is really the lens through which we examine Sri Lankan traditions and the culture. So as the young woman experiences and observes what's happening to him, she grows up, and as we move through that growth, we realize that this is really a coming of age story, and so that's how it is.
When you wrote this book, you were in America, right? In USA. But the book is about Sri Lankan culture. So who was the audience in your mind when you were writing it?
So when I first started writing the book, I aimed it at a Western audience because I thought I had a very unusual story. And I thought people who would like to travel, or even armchair travelers, they would like this almost anthropological outlook in the story. And also it's a very immersive experience. I was told, reviewers say that they felt as if they were there. So, and then of course Sri Lankans will find it really nostalgic because I've captured a certain time period, and I have created a story around that particular time. And then when you think more, Southeast Asians, they would also like this story because we have the same roots. We are geographically in different areas, but we do have the same roots. Anybody and everybody who's interested in another culture and another time, they will enjoy this book.
I agree. When did you start your literary career, and do you consider yourself a journalist to the core, or you are a writer first?
Well, as a teenager, I started writing about my experiences, and I even managed to get them published in the daily newspaper. I guess those were the beginnings of my literary career. You can think of it like that. So since I went into journalism, I became a news reporter, and I did some feature writing. I had some creative writing alongside, but I mostly considered myself a news reporter because that was my job. And later on, when I got some time to develop more creative writing and I went into novel writing, I found that it was really easy for me to make the switch.
I see.
I just could write, during the morning I could write news, and in the evening I could write fiction.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that was fortunate.
About the time that Ceylon became Sri Lanka, I graduated from girlhood to womanhood. Unlike the peaceful name change of my country, my transition, as it seemed to me then, was revolutionary. It was in fact a regression. Sri Lanka became independent, while I, on the other hand, lost the little personal freedom that I had. This is so subtle, the humor in this book, that you have compared a little young girl who's coming off of her age with the country that is going to change her name. And this subtle humor is intertwined with the rest of the storyline as such. It elevates your novel, I must say. And how did you learn to sprinkle this humor like an excellent chef in the right proportion so that the storyline remains very attractive and fragrant with humor? Is there a particular person who was very funny in your life, or a particular writer who influenced you?
Yes, when I was a teenager, I used to read a lot of P.G. Wodehouse's novels.
There you go. That's what I suspected.
You know him, he's a British writer. He wrote a lot about the British aristocracy.
Yes.
But as much as I learned about that, I also observed his humor. He had a very subtle way of writing. Yes. And So he could be very sardonic, supercilious,
Mm.
and all that. But at the same time, there was always sort of a drama that he would create around every scene.
Mhm.
So I think I observed all that. And another writer that I was inspired by Charles Dickens,
I see.
because he too could create all these idiosyncratic characters and create an atmosphere.
Mm.
So recently I heard that Charles Dickens used to walk around the streets of London in the night looking for characters so that he could use
That's
them
funny.
in his books. So I didn't roam the streets of Colombo looking for characters,
I see.
but I think I was influenced by the environments he created.
I see.
And thankfully, I was able to write in a funny way,
Yeah.
in a humorous way. I think that was natural to me.
I noticed a very peculiar phenomenon in your book, that the names of the people in the older generation, they are all Christian, like Olga, Nelson, Bertie. And the names of the younger generation are either Hindu or Buddhist, like Mallakanti, Dhamet, or Renuka. I mean, my cousin's name is Renuka. So, how did that happen?
Yes, Bhagyashree, Sri Lanka is a really hodgepodge of cultures
Yes.
and influences.
Yes.
So my mother's generation,
Mhm.
and even her mother and her mother's mother,
Yeah.
her grandparents,
Yeah.
they all had British names because we were ruled by the British for 150 years.
But they were not Christians.
They were not Christian, they
I
were
see.
Buddhists,
I
but
see.
they took on, they were given these
yeah.
very lovely English
Yeah.
names.
Yeah.
And but later on, after independence
Mhm.
from the British,
Mhm.
after 1948,
Mhm.
they reverted back to
Back
the
to the-
Sinhala name.
yes.
So that's how I became Srianthi.
That's a beautiful name.
You
Yeah.
know, and then even thinking further, even before that, when
Mhm.
the Portuguese ruled us,
Yeah.
they ruled only the coastal areas in
Yeah.
Ceylon.
Mhm.
They converted my people, my ancestors, to Christianity.
Mhm.
And because Ceylonese at the time did not have surnames, they only had ancestral home names.
Mhm.
They gave us their surnames. So that's how we got Perera and De Silva and Pires
I
and
see.
Jimel and all these other names
That's-
that came into use. So
That-
it's a real, acharu, like we say.
Achar, it's a pickle.
It is a pickle. Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting actually. I found one custom that you have mentioned in your book very, very familiar. Okay, it is still ongoing in Hindu society. It is that of consulting astrologers for matchmaking. You have written a very funny paragraph actually about how your mother and aunt find a particular astrologer, and you have written that they means the astrologers deliver the bad news with arrogant confidence and a happy air. And then your aunt finds a particular person that she likes, because why does she like him? Because he's a kindly man who had perfected the art or science of presenting the negative in a positive light. I thought it was very funny. So, do you believe in horoscopes, and where does this custom stand in Sri Lankan society these days?
Yes, Bhagyashree. I think I believe in horoscopes. And as a child, I grew up in a household where they were consulted very often.
I see.
And especially when it's an arranged marriage, they always, parents, they
Yeah.
always look into the horoscopes and see whether they tally.
Yeah.
And sometimes even when it's a love match,
Yeah.
they still check out the
Cannot let
horoscopes,
it go.
much to the dismay of the young people.
Right. The story in this novel is that of a non-political middle-class family. But you have put in a lot of political information there, very appropriately so, and it is interwoven in a very nice way. You must have taken a lot of time and you must have given a lot of efforts to it to collect this information. Why did you feel that it was important to have that political information in that novel.
Yes.
Cheers.
Yes.
These bloody communist fellows, they have good time going on foreign trips every month.
We don't even have anything decent to eat. So what harm is there in having a drink now and then?
True. We are supporting local industry.
Of course, at any rate, cheerio to the imported stuff. Forget block butter, the craft cheese, and the moldy fish. Everything is gone.
1970, that was when Sirimao Bandaranaike came into power. She promised rice from the moon. But what did she do instead? She reduced the portion even further. The previous government gave to the poor.
Malli, now the emphasis on austerity as if a war is on.
How things have changed in 2 years.
They ration everything and want us to live on manioc and cossata. Are you ready?
Catch me going, Yans.
I can do without a lot of these things, but not the Bombay onions. I want Bombay onions in my sinisan bowl. The bloody black market fellows.
Let's hope the hoarded onions will get rotten. Let's drink to that.
Ceylon used to be such a wonderful place to live.
We are not living in Ceylon anymore. It is the independent member of the British Commonwealth. That is now Sri Lanka.
Pa 6 fellows.
Ha pa 6 fellows, an expression invented by Tata, which has no origins in Sinhala or English, but contains the correct amount of ridicule to belittle someone. A party without music in our household? No. Soon the neighborhood was drowned in the impromptu music created by my father and the uncles. And of course the dog.
I felt that if I added the information about the socio-political situation of the country at that time, it would add a very rich layer to the book. I wove in all those stories, and I also showed how it personally affected family members. Like I have a character, Tamara's brother, having to go to the bakery early in the morning. He has to get up, get on his bicycle, and go and stand in a line in the bakery.
One loaf of bread.
For that one loaf of bread, because that was ration too. You couldn't get 6 loaves.
Oh my God.
There was nothing like that. So he would bring it, and then when Tamara sat for dinner that night, there would be weevils in the bread. So she would pick out the weevils and then the bread. And then, of course, she had to wear these frocks, they were called. Frocks made of fabric that smelled of kerosene.
Oh my God.
Because there were no imports. So there was some local fabric that was manufactured that was really not up to standard. So I remember having to wear dresses that smelled of kerosene.
Oh my God.
And see the same design.
Everybody
else wearing it. So things,
Yeah.
things like that really you remember.
Right.
And there was no question of going into the store and buying 3 pounds of sugar and bringing it back and cooking, making a cake or whatever.
Right.
So all these things I wanted to bring out because I wanted to show living in a land of plenty. Like now, the stark differences.
So the poverty was created by the government.
Almost,
Almost,
yes. It was. So then also by way of, it was not only just the socio-economic stuff.
Yeah.
I also wanted to be very thorough in my research. Because I'm a journalist, I like to be factual. So I went into the archives in Ceylon, and I went over the newspapers from 1973 to 1977, and I sort of tried to remind myself about events. And also, by the way, I have to mention that also for research purposes, I pretended to be a mother of a bridegroom looking for a prospective bride, and I placed an advertisement in the Sunday Observer, and I got this stack of letters, also with the horoscope.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think your journalist showed up in that during that work. Like I need to do something. So that's, I think the fiction writer and journalist were working together.
They work together always, and there's no fantasy.
No, there is no fantasy.
There's no fantasy.
Exactly. Exactly. No, it really gave a very strong dimension to it. So it is grounded in reality. That's what I felt, that Tamara de Silva really exists. So I noticed a very peculiar word in your novel. It's called baila. So I want to know what it means, and actually I would like you to read the passage from your book. It's so funny, and we'll talk about that word further.
Tata began humming the refrain of a baila, denoting the natural progression of gaiety. Martin uncle asked me to fetch a plastic bucket from the kitchen, which he turned upside down and started thumping in time to the song about Babiachi's bicycle.
කොහොමද කාලෙකට පස්සේ අද බස් දෙකක් ගන්න වුණා පොරල්ලෙන් අනේ ඇයි ඕ අද පොය දවසනේ පොයනේ
අයි මොකද බස් දෙකක් ගන්න ඕනේ
මම කියන්ට අනුරාධපුරෙන්.
Oh, Tamara, you seem to have grown a couple of inches taller these past few days. You look so sweet in that long frock.
Congratulations, Tamara Dua.
There you are. At last. I was beginning to wonder when you would emerge from your hibernation.
Are you okay, Aki? Did you recover from your measles?
3 aunts, 4 uncles, 5 cousins and a dog greeted my reappearance in society. Tata, my father, was impatient to share the Mendy special coconut rack.
Let the show begin. I bought this for a special occasion.
What is this, Oswald? Must you drink today as well, now that you also have a grown-up daughter?
That's exactly what I'm going to do. Celebrating my grown-up daughter.
It's Poya Day too. How can Buddhists behave like this? It's getting more and more difficult to get Dinesh to go out of the house on a Poya Day. Forget about going to the temple. But he is more than happy to come to a party. Ane.
Did you hear about Walter Fernando? He passed away recently. All because of drinking. He had liver problems.
What man? Those who drink will die, and those who don't drink will also die. So it's better to enjoy life and conk off gracefully when the time comes.
Hurry.
Oh, let's celebrate.
Get some society.
Get some ice.
Oh yes, with chili sauce, hot.
This arak warms the gut and wags the tongue. No use talking to you. Have it your way. Mary, let's have a chit-chat somewhere else. We haven't met for a long time.
Yes. Let's go to Tamara's room. We can have some peace and quiet in there. And I have lots to tell y'all.
My father knew how to whip a party, much like a gale could stir up a monsoon.
So what is baila?
So baila is a type of music that was introduced to us by the Portuguese.
I see.
And actually baila is a Spanish word for dance.
I see.
Yes. And it's a very lively type of rhythm, 4/4 rhythm. And often the words are a little naughty, ribald sometimes.
I see.
So it's very fun, and usually at any Sri Lankan gathering, we end up with baila.
I see.
That's how we enjoy ourselves.
Every culture has its own bylaw, I think so. A Maiden's Prayer has many dimensions, as I told you. Excellent language, social dimension, political information, historical information. And not only that, it is complete with culinary dimension as well. There are mouth-watering recipes at the end of this book that you will enjoy to read and make it at home. Each and every recipe that I read, there was either desiccated coconut, fresh coconut, coconut milk in some form. So it just tells me that, okay, this chef is from a coastal area. The characters in your book, in your novel, they're all alive in my mind. It's like a movie happening in front of my mind's eye. So do you see that unfolding on a silver screen yourself?
Oh yes, I think it will be a good movie because I have a cast of characters with human foibles, and also it takes place at a particular time, a particular geography, and a particular era, political era. So all those things are in place to make it a very interesting story. And at the back, to combine it all, there's this questioning voice of a young girl who's in the middle of growing up.
Yes.
So it adds a very distinct voice to the story.
Based on your experience so far, your literary journey with this book, your success that you have achieved, what is your message to the immigrant writers in USA?
Yes, when I was setting out to write the story and I attended a few classes on fiction writing, one of the things that I kept hearing was, write about what you know. I think that's a very valuable piece of advice.
I think so.
Because people from the Southeast Asia, their experiences and their history is so different to the Western world.
Yeah.
So we have such fresh experiences to draw from, and I think that's a very solid piece of advice for any immigrant writer.
Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. I hope I get to talk to you soon again about your second book, and I hope we get to read many more books from Srianthi. Congratulations again, and best wishes for further writing.
Thank you, Bhagyashree, and thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your new series, Shabdakarmi, under the banner of Akshaybhasha. Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed the first episode of Shabdakarmi today. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Goodbye.